A group of never-Trumpers has put an organization together for the sole purpose of bringing down the president. President Trump sent a heated letter to Nancy Pelosi, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wants to write your healthcare legislation, but she can't even understand her own. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is the 13-Minute News Hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
All right, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Wednesday. We're going to dive into the news, but first I want to tell you about my friends over at Bottle Breacher. They're running a Christmas special, and it's perfect timing for those stocking stuffers, groomsmen gifts, man items, you name it. Just go to bottlebreacher.com, use coupon code Bobby13-Santa for $15 off your next purchase over $50. That's bottlebreacher.com, coupon code Bobby13-Santa. All right, first, I want to tell you about this group of so-called Republicans, these never-Trumpers. They've gotten together, the same old cast of characters, and putting an organization together to go after Trump. And you know the old saying, with friends like these, who needs enemies? I don't think it's ever applied more than in today's political climate within the Republican Party. I mean, we have a Republican president. This is a man who is trying to build the border wall, who told Congress, repeal Obamacare, and I'll sign it. The same guy who lowered taxes. And then you have this group of never-Trumpers out there that want to defeat him. They want to bring him down. And you have to ask yourself, well, for what end? To what end? Do you want Democrats in power? Do you want people who favor open borders and higher taxes and Medicare for all? It makes no sense, yet these never-Trumpers are at it. They've got a new organization. And here's a report from the Washington Times. A group of Republican critics of President Trump, including the husband of White House advisor Kellyanne Conway, is forming a super PAC to defeat the president and Trumpism in 2020. The principals of the group, calling itself the Lincoln Project, include lawyer George Conway, former John McCain advisor Steve Schmidt, veteran GOP operative Rick Wilson, and John Weaver, an advisor to former Ohio Governor John Kasich. Wow, isn't that a cast of characters? All it's missing is Bill Kristol and a few of these others, and it would be absolutely complete. Here's more from the Washington Times. Mr. Trump and his enablers have abandoned conservatism and long-standing Republican principles and replaced it with Trumpism, an empty faith led by a bogus prophet, they wrote in a New York Times op-ed on Tuesday. They said they aim to defeat President Trump and Trumpism at the ballot box. With fundraising commitments of more than $1 million, they hope to fund advertising in several battleground states to convince Republicans to turn away from Mr. Trump. So John Weaver, the Kasich advisor, he went on Twitter as well as this New York Times op-ed, and he wrote this. He says, "We are Republicans, and we want Trump defeated. Join me, George Conway, Rick Wilson, Steve Schmidt, and many more at Project Lincoln. Time to get off the sidelines, join our allies, and defeat Trump's enablers in Congress along with Trump." Well, you can imagine the White House wasn't just going to sit back and take this ridiculous nonsense. So their communications director fired back an awesome response. And here's more from the Washington Times. It said, Trump campaign communications director Tim Murtaugh called the group a pathetic little club of irrelevant faux Republicans who are upset that they've lost all their power and influence inside the Republican Party. When President Trump got elected on a promise to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C., these establishment charlatans who for years enriched themselves off the backs of the conservative movement were the very swamp he was referring to, Mr. Murtaugh said in a statement. Calling any of these people conservative or even referring to them as Republicans at this point is an insult to conservatives and Republicans everywhere. So Murtaugh makes a great point. And that is, these aren't real Republicans. They are fighting the leader of our country and the leader of our party. And again, to what end? Do they really want Democrats in power? Do they really want higher taxes and open borders and Medicare for all? It's just, what is the angle here? Do they just hate this person so much personally that they're willing to throw all philosophy, all conservative values aside, like they had any to begin with? But next, I want to talk about President Trump, because yesterday there's more impeachment. You know, today they're getting together, will likely vote on the articles of impeachment. But President Trump sent a letter to Nancy Pelosi just blasting her, blasting the process, and basically calling her out and the Democrats out for what this is, which is a bogus scam. It is a witch hunt. And here's a report from the Washington Examiner. President Trump wrote a 6-page letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi attacking impeachment proceedings by Democrats, saying that they cheapen the importance of the very ugly word and that the charges against him are baseless. By proceeding with your invalid impeachment, you are violating your oaths of office, you are breaking your allegiance to the Constitution, and you are declaring open war on American democracy, Trump wrote Tuesday. So the president, he then turned from impeachment in general to Nancy Pelosi in particular, and here's the report. Trump expressed incredulity about Pelosi's claim that she praised for him and fumed about Democrats invoking the Founding Fathers to justify impeachment. He wrote that the proceedings inflicted great damage and hurt on his family. You dare to invoke the Founding Fathers in pursuit of this election nullification scheme. Yet, your spiteful actions display unfettered contempt for America's founding, and your egregious conduct threatens to destroy that which our founders pledged their very lives to build, he wrote. Even worse than offending the Founding Fathers, you're offending Americans of faith by continually saying, I pray for the president, when you know this statement is not true unless it is meant in a negative sense. So President Trump added there was actually more due process at the Salem witch trials than what he's getting now. So around this time, around the time that the media was picking up on this letter yesterday, President Trump was actually talking with reporters and talking about impeachment. And here's part of what he said.
The whole impeachment thing is a hoax. We look forward to getting onto the Senate. We're not entitled to lawyers. We're not entitled to witnesses. We're not entitled to anything in the House. It's a total sham.
Yep, due process worse than the Salem witch trials. But then the president talked about Republican unity. And I don't know, maybe that was just a subliminal shot to this Lincoln Project and these establishment Republicans. But here's what he said.
This has been a total sham from the beginning. Everybody knows it. I've never seen the Republican Party so united. We got our last vote, as you know, we got 100% of the vote. I believe the Senate is equally as well united.
Yes, Republicans stand united. It's a great sign. It helps drive these polls down, too. The Democrats are shooting themselves in the foot with impeachment. We've seen it in poll after poll. But the idea, this notion that Republicans are standing united certainly helps when they see everyone together calling the Democrats out on this bogus witch hunt. So then later in that Q&A session, CNN's Jim Acosta asked the president if he felt responsible in any way for this impeachment proceedings, which is a bizarre question, yet he asked it, of course, and here's the president's response.
President, do you take any responsibility for the fact that you're about to be impeached?
No, I don't take any, zero, to put it mildly. They took a perfect phone call that I had with the president of Ukraine, an absolutely perfect call. You know it, they all know it. Nothing was said wrong in that call. To impeach the president of the United States for that is a disgrace, and it's a mark in our country.
So as I said, the vote's likely today. We'll see if they actually impeach the president. And then, of course, it'll move on to the Senate where everything will be cleared up and we can actually move on with the country's business. So next, I want to talk to you about what's going on in Virginia. We've covered this a little bit with what's going on with the Second Amendment in Virginia and the state government. But I want to dive into it deeper, and I want to give a shout out to Josh Rick. He's one of our loyal watchers, been with us for a long time. He sent me some information, said, please cover this, so we're going to cover it. So for background, as you remember, in the November elections, Democrats took control of both houses, both chambers in their state assembly, their General Assembly. They've got a Democrat governor, and they're going after Second Amendment rights. They're just flat out going after them. Here's a report from the Patriot Post. It says, following the Democrat Party's narrow takeover of both houses of Virginia's General Assembly this past November, those majorities are teaming up with Democrat Governor Ralph Northam to undercut the Commonwealth's historically staunch pro-Second Amendment status. In response, thousands of patriotic Virginians have risen up in defense of their constitutionally protected rights to challenge the Democrats' planned gun-grabbing agenda by declaring their communities Second Amendment sanctuaries. Thus far, 75 of Virginia's 95 counties and 18 of the Commonwealth's legally independent cities have enacted Second Amendment sanctuary policies. So let's take this in steps. Democrats say they want to take the guns. Local communities and citizens say, no way, Jose. So now the Democrats are upping the game, threatening to even, or mentioning that they might have to use the National Guard. Here's more from the Patriot Post. It says, however, the fight is far from over, as Democrats have begun issuing threats against their fellow Virginians should they refuse to comply with Northam's proposed draconian gun-grabbing legislation. I'm not the governor, but the governor may have to mobilize the National Guard to enforce the law, warned Democrat Representative Donald McEachin. This call, because I don't know how serious these counties are and how severe the violations will be, but that's obviously an option he has. Are you kidding me? Referencing calling in the National Guard on Virginia residents because they're exercising their U.S. constitutional rights? But then there's more. The Democrats are trying to take it even a step further. While McEachin alone is not in a position to back up his threats, Democrats in the General Assembly have in fact taken action with a bill clearly aimed at compelling law enforcement into enforcing whatever anti-2A legislation they may pass. The recently introduced HB 67 would terminate the employment of any law enforcement officer who refuses to enforce a state law, irrespective of the local government's position. Democrat Rep. Jerry Connolly explained, I would hope they either resign in good conscience because they cannot uphold the law which they were sworn to uphold, or they're prosecuted for failure to fulfill their oath. The law is the law. If that becomes the law, you don't have a choice, not if you're a sworn officer of the law. This is absolutely insane, all right? They're talking about making government officials, law enforcement officers, go against the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution. It is a big mess in Virginia. It's scary, the kind of things that the Democrats are proposing there, and we're going to stay on the story. So finally, I want to wrap up with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, because yesterday, if you follow my Twitter feed, I posted this video, which is just nonsense, and I want to share it with you today. Check this out.
But at the very least, a $15 minimum wage, it may be higher as we introduce these things, but it means Medicare for all, or at the very least, guaranteed health care as a right, housing as a right. So we have to really say, for the things that we depend on to live, we need at a bare minimum a public option, if not a guaranteed universality in it.
Oh my gosh, she wants the government to pay for everything. And what is this guaranteed universality? I don't even know what that means. But if she's talking about everything that a person needs to live, you know it's going to be open-ended. You know it's going to keep going. I mean, that's food, right? That's shelter. You could think about transportation. You could think about communication, on and on and on. And she wants the government to pay for it. And she put out this tweet about healthcare that's just mind-blowing. Check this out. She says, members of Congress also have to buy their plans off the exchange. They are gold plans that are partially subsidized. That means I get to choose between 66 complex financial products. This is absurd. No person should go without healthcare, and no one should go through this either. So she's complaining about 66 financial products. You know what that means? That's healthcare options. That's what that means. These financial products, that's healthcare options. That's healthcare choice. And what we saw in Obamacare is that as choice went away, prices have gone up. They continue to climb. Options, choices are continuing to diminish. And she is lamenting the fact that she has choice. All right, this is the person that wants to write our healthcare legislation. She can't even understand her own plans, yet she wants to be in charge of it for all of us. It's ridiculous. So folks, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified, and we'll see you next time. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-Minute News Hour. Okay, friends, just a little reminder before you go, and no, this does not count against my 13 minutes. Please hit the subscribe button below and tell your friends. And if you happen to miss our last show, you can check it out right here. And also for great conservative news and commentary, please check out GOPUSA.com. All right, folks, we'll see you on the next show. Have a great day.